Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is another one that I thought would help a lot of people. And this video is going to be about basically making a dialogue interaction menu with an NPC. Or just anything, it doesn't actually have to be an NPC, but any kind of area that you want your character to walk inside of, and then have like a prompt like for an interaction menu or something. That's what this video is going to be based on. So, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use a dummy character from the animation plugin. And we're going to use a part as an example here. So basically, let's just insert that. And I'm going to want this part to be a sphere. So this is basically what we're going to be doing. This is the idea of what we're going to be doing. And just as some extra information, there's a lot of other solutions to problems like this. Like, for example, a lot of times people will do magnitude checks, and they'll just run that inside of a loop, like, forever, which is really not a good idea because that's using a lot of resources in your game that, you know, is mostly being performed on unnecessary calculations. So this is what I think a better alternative to solutions like that. So I'm going to start by creating a script. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to call this region detector, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make it a module script because, like I said before, I kind of want to make it like a like an API so that we don't have to worry about messy code. So I'm going to call it region detector, and we'll just put that inside of the script that we'll use. Let's call that tester. So this is going to be where our code is actually running. So region detector is equal to require script.region detector. Okay, so now let's start writing code in here, and then we'll worry about how we're going to use the API. So, we're going to want to, let's just think about the parameters for a second. We're going to want the region detector to be around a certain point. So we're going to want, like, you know, an origin and then a radius from that origin. So I'm going to call this detector, and that's going to be our module. Oops. So, let's see. To create a region detector, we'll say new region. And we're going to want an origin and a radius. So essentially, this is going to create a part around an NPC or any position vector 3 that we give it. So we're obviously not going to want our region to be visible, or maybe you do, but for this case we're just going to make it invisible. So first we're going to make our region part. Oh, please don't do that. Alright, so I'm going to put radius, radius, and radius. And then we're just going to multiply this vector by 2, since we want to double all of those components. Alright, so here's what I'm going to do. What I want this to look like when I'm actually coding is I'm going to want to create a new region detector like this. So I'd say something like NPC range is region detector new region. We're going to give the position we want the region to be oriented around, so that's going to be the NPC's. We're probably going to want to use their humanoid root part, since that's always going to be a part of the character. So we're going to use workspace.dummy.humanoid root part.position, and let's say we want the radius to be 20. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to make it so that the basically I'm using this as kind of a constructor. What I want the constructor to return is a table that allows me to choose what events, or I'm sorry, what functions I want to connect my events to for leaving and entering the region. So what I'm going to do is, so it's going to look something like this. It'll be like NPC range dot entered region, and that's going to be some function. So yeah, I think that's what I want to do. I could make this an actual event, like I could use bindable events for this and make it so that it's like NPC range dot entered region and then connect that to a function. I could do that because that would allow me to make multiple events for that one thing, or multiple connections for that one event, I mean. So I could do like something like this, but I think for now I just only really care about having one connection, so we're just gonna make that be a function. So I'm gonna go here. We're gonna need to, since we're returning a table, we're gonna want to define that. We'll say region events, and the two events we're gonna want are entered region and left region. And the only reason that I'm setting these to nil right now is just because I just want to be able to look at the kind of content that's going to be inside this table. So next we're going to set up the actual touched and touched ended events for this part. So region part dot touched connect function, and that's just going to be the part that touched it. And for the sake of this video, we only want this region detection to work for players, so it's just going to be between players and NPCs. So we're going to want to check and make sure that the part is actually that it belongs to an actual player. So we're going to need the player service for this. Players. And we're going to want to check if part.parent, if player service get player from character part.parent. This is basically just saying if we can get a player from the character that the part.parent is. So say for example the player's humanoid root part touched this region part. The humanoid root part is inside the player's character, so that's the parent of the humanoid root part, and we're just asking if that character is actually a player. So it's a useful thing to do whenever you want to make sure that something is actually a player. And since we want it to be humanoid root part only, we're going to say and the part's name is equal to humanoid root part. The reason that we're doing this part is because we don't just want to make it so that any component of the character that touches the region part will fire it, because then we're going to be firing it multiple times. Say for example you like enter the region sideways with your left arm, then your right arm would also fire this again because we don't have this check right here. So we only want one part of the player to collide with the region part. So that's why we're doing that. And the last check is going to be our debounce. We're going to want a debounce so that, you know, just in case. Actually, we might not even need a debounce because of this part. But just because of how sometimes touched and touched ended can be kind of weird and kind of trigger happy, I'm just going to add one anyway. It never hurts. Also, if you want to add some delay between when your entered region and left region events fire, then debounce would also come in handy for that, so it definitely doesn't hurt. So I'm going to call this local player is player, we'll just call it player in region. It's going to start out as false. So we want to say and not player in region. And then we're immediately going to set that to true, so that if this fires a second time, it won't get past that boundary. And then we're going to want to say if region events dot entered region. So if we've defined an event for when the player enters the region, then just execute that that function, entered region. And I don't think we really care about passing any arguments to this function, so I think we can just leave that alone there. So this handles when the player enters the region. Now we want to do when the player leaves the region. So touched ended. We want the same checks. So actually, yeah, the same checks, but this time we only want this to fire if the player is in the region. So that's good. Then we're going to immediately turn that to false. So when the player leaves the region, then player in region is false. And then this is going to be changed to left region. And I think that's good. Like I said before, some of these checks might not be necessary. Like, actually, yeah, I think we can either have the debounce or we can either have this. I don't think we need both of them. If anything, I would keep this because we don't want multiple parts. Well, I guess it really doesn't matter. I don't know. We'll worry about that later. We'll just worry about it working first. So then we're going to want to return the region events table so that we can define what we want our functions to be for those events. And I think that's pretty much it. So if I go back to tester and I create a function for this, so function NPC range.entered region, and I'll just print player has entered the region. Or you know what we could do? We could pass the player here. We could have the player as a parameter for this function here. So we could do, yeah, we could just pass this in here. Obviously, I'd make a variable for it first, but if we pass that in there, then I could, like, make it so that I have access to the player here, but like I said, I'm not gonna worry about that. So player has entered the region and range dot left region, player has left the region. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and delete this, or I'll just move it over here actually. And I'll move this guy over here. So let's see. Yeah, I think that's all I have to do. So let's go ahead and test this. And we'll see if that works. Okay, just a few other things that I missed from before. I forgot to actually position our region part around the origin, so we're going to want to do that real quick. Region part dot cframe is going to be frame dot new origin. And just to make it easier to see our print results in the output window, I'm going to go ahead and put this in a local script because we want to be able to see it in the console of our single player window. So I'm just doing that so we don't have to switch to the simulated server window. So I'm just going to make a copy of this real quick in starter player scripts. So we're going to move the module in there, and we're just going to copy the code from here into here. And then I'm going to delete this. Okay, now let's try it. Alright, so now we are in our single player window again. And what we should see is an invisible part parented to the workspace that is actually our region detector, which is here, and it's centered around our dummy. And when I enter this invisible region, we should see in our output window that we have our print results. So that works for entering the region, and as soon as we leave, we should have a print saying that we left. And that works perfectly. So at this point, most of the heavy lifting is pretty much done. I mean, this is just what we want to get to in the first place. So what I'm going to do now is, just for kind of some bonus content, I'm going to cut to me making an example of a cool interaction menu that you can do with this dummy. And I'll put the link to where you can get all this code in the description of this video. And I'll just make the whole place uncopy locked so that you can go in and see what's going on. So, see you then. Alright, so here is a demonstration based on the code that I just showed you guys in the video. So, this is my version of implementing this kind of concept in an interaction menu in a game. So, basically, when my character enters a range of 15 studs of this NPC, then I get this thing telling me that I can press X to interact, and when I do, I get this cool menu here, and I can close that, and it brings me back to this. And when I'm out of range, it just disappears. So I think it's pretty neat. I'm pretty sure this is what most people have in mind when they think of interaction menus. So if this interests you, then like I said before, all this whole place will be available in the description of this video. It's all uncopy locked. And yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, just leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.